It would mean just a great deal to me if you'd look. You gonna hold on while I do it? I'm not gonna pay for this cold. Take your time, I said. He took 17 minutes. I just hung on listening. Every so often I'd hear a footstep or a crash of books or a grunt. Finally, well, I got the Florentines like I thought. So close. But not the English, I said. And suddenly he's yelling at me, what, are you crazy? I break my back. And he says, I haven't got it. Yes, I got it. I got it right here. And believe me, it's going to cost a pretty penny. Great. Really, no kidding. Now listen, here's what you do. Get yourself a cab and tell him to take the book straight up to Park and... Mr. California Mashugana, you listen now. It's coming up a blizzard and I'm going no place, and neither are these books without money. $6.50 on the barrel each. You want the English, you gotta take the Florentines. And I close at 6. These books don't leave my premises without $13 changing hands. Don't move, I said, hanging up. And who do you call when it's after hours and Christmas on the horizon? Only your lawyer. Charlie, I said when I got him, please do me this. Go to 4th Avenue, Abramowitz. Give him $13 for 2 books, taxi up to my house, and tell the doorman to take them to my apartment. And yes, I know it's snowing. What do you say? This is such a bizarre request, I have to agree to do it. I called Abramowitz yet again. My lawyer is hot on the trail. No checks, Abramowitz said. You're all hard. I hung up and started figuring. More or less 120 minutes long distance at 1:35 per first 3 minutes, plus 13 for the books, plus probably 10 for Charlie's taxi, plus probably 60 for his time, came to 250 maybe. All for my Jason to have the Morgenstern. I leaned back and closed my eyes. 250, not to mention 2 solid hours of torment and anguish, and let's not forget Sandy Sterling. A steal. They called me at 7:30. I was in my suite. He loves the bike, Helen said. He's practically out of control. Fabo, I said. And your books came. What books, I said. Chevalier was never more casual. The Princess Bride, in various languages, one of them fortunately English. Well, that's nice, I said, still loose. I practically forgot I asked to have them sent. How'd they get here? I called my editor's secretary and had her scrounge up a couple copies. Maybe they had them at Harcourt. Who knows? They did have copies at Harcourt. Can you buy that? I'll get to why in the next pages, probably. Give me the kid. Hi, he said a second later. Listen, Jason, I told him, we thought about giving you a bike for your birthday, but we already decided against it. Boy, are you wrong. I got one already. Jason has inherited his mother's total lack of humor. I don't know, maybe he's funny and I'm not. We just don't laugh much together is all I can say for sure. My son Jason is this incredible looking kid. Paint him yellow, he'd mop up for the school sumo team. A blimp. All the time stuffing his face. I watch my weight, and old Helen is only visible full on front, plus on top of which she is this leading child shrink in Manhattan, and our kid can roll faster than he can walk. He's expressing himself through food, Helen always says, his anxieties. When he feels ready to cope, he'll slim down. Hey, Jason, Mom tells me this book arrived today. The princess thing? I'd sure like it if maybe you'd give it a read while I'm gone. I loved it when I was a kid, and I'm kind of interested in your reaction. Do I have to love it too? He was his mother's son, all right. Jason, no. Just the truth, exactly what you think. I miss you, Big Shot, and I'll talk to you on your birthday. Boy, are you wrong. Today is my birthday. We bantered a bit more, long past when there was much to say. Then I did the same with my spouse and hung up, promising a return by the end of 1 week. It took 2. Conferences dragged, producers got inspirations that had to get carefully shot down, directors needed their egos soothed. Anyway, I was longer than anticipated in sunny California. Finally, though, I was allowed to return to the care and safety of the family, so I quick buzzed to LA airport before anybody's mind changed. I got there early, which I always do when I come back, because I had to load up my pockets with doodads and such for Jason. Every time I get home from a trip, he runs to me hollering, let me see the pockets! And then he goes through all my pockets, taking out his graft, and once the loot is totaled, he gives me a nice hug. Isn't it awful what we'll do in this world to feel wanted? Let me see the pockets! Jason shouted, moving to me across the foyer. It was a supper-time Thursday, and while he went through his ritual, Helen emerged from the library and kissed my cheek, going, what a dashing-looking fellow I have, which is also ritual, and laden with gifts, Jason kind of hugged me and belted off to his room. Angelica's just getting dinner on, Helen said. You couldn't have timed it better. Angelica? Helen put her finger to her lips and whispered, it's her 3rd day on, but I think she may be a treasure. I whispered back, what was wrong with the treasure we had when I left? She'd only been with us a week then. She proved a disappointment, Helen said. That was all. Helen is this brilliant lady. Junior Phi Beta in college, every academic honor conceivable, really an intellect of startling breadth and accomplishment. Only she can't keep a maid. First, I guess she feels guilty having anybody, since most of the anybodies available nowadays are black or Spanish, and Helen is ultra super liberal. Second, she's so efficient she scares them. She can do everything better than they can, and she knows it, and she knows they know it. Third, once she's got them panicked, she tries to explain, being an analyst, why they shouldn't be frightened. And after a good solid half-hour ego search with Helen, they're really frightened. Anyway, we've had an average of 4 treasures a year for the last few years. We've been running in bad luck, but it'll change, I said, just as reassuringly as I knew how. I used to heckle her about the health problem.
Pause for a second, I need to get water.
Sure. We're going to pause for a second. Okay, we're prepared to continue. I used to heckle her about the health problem, but I learned that was not necessarily wise. Dinner was ready a little later, and with an arm around my wife and an arm around my son, I advanced toward the dining room. I felt, at that moment, safe, secure, all the nice things. Supper was on the table. Creamed spinach, mashed potatoes, gravy, and pot roast. Terrific, except I don't like pot roast, since I'm a rare meat man, but creamed spinach I have a latch for, so all in all, a more than edible spread was set across the tablecloth. We sat. Helen served the meat, the rest we passed. My pot roast slice was not terribly moist, but the gravy could compensate. Helen rang. Angelica appeared, maybe 20 or 18, swarthy, slow-moving. Angelica, Helen began, this is Mr. Goldman. I smiled and said hi and waved a fork. She nodded back. Angelica, this is not to be construed as criticism, since what happened is all my fault. But in the future, we must both try very hard to remember that Mr. Goldman likes his roast beef rare. This was roast beef, I said. Helen shot me a look. Now, Angelica, there is no problem, and I should have told you more than once about Mr. Goldman's preferences, but next time we have boned rib roast. Let's all do our best to make sure the middle pink is pink, shall we? Angelica backed into the kitchen. Another treasure down the tubes. Remember now, we all 3 started this meal happy. 2 of us are left in that state. Helen clearly being distraught. Jason was piling the mashed potatoes on his plate with a practiced and steady motion. I smiled at my kid. Hey, I tried, let's go a little easy, huh, fellow? He splatted another fat spoonful onto his plate. Jason, they're just loaded, I said then. I'm really hungry, Dad, he said, not looking at me. Fill up on the meat then, why don't you? I said. Eat all the meat you want, I won't say a word. I'm not eating nothing, Jason said, and he shoved his plate away and folded his arms and stared off into space. If I were a furniture salesperson, Helen said to me, or perhaps a teller in a bank, I could understand. But how can you have spent all these years married to a psychiatrist and talk like that? You're out of the dark ages, Willie. Helen, the boy is overweight. All I suggested was he might leave a few potatoes for the rest of the world and stuff on this lovely prime pot roast your treasure has whipped up for my triumphant return. Willie, I don't want to shock you, but Jason happens to have not only a very fine mind, but also exceptionally keen eyesight. When he looks at himself in the mirror, I assure you, he knows he is not slender. That is because he does not choose, at this stage, to be slender. He's not that far from dating Helen. What then? Jason is 10, darling, and not interested at this stage in girls. At this stage, he is interested in rocketry. What difference does a slight case of overweight make to a rocket lover? When he chooses to be slender, I assure you he has both the intelligence and the willpower to become slender. Until that time, please, in my presence, do not frustrate the child. Sandy Sterling, in her bikini, was dancing behind my eyes. I'm not eating, and that's it, Jason said then. Sweet child, Helen said to the kid, in that tone she reserves on this earth only for such moments. Be logical. If you do not eat your potatoes, you will be upset, and I will be upset. Your father, clearly, is already upset. If you do eat your potatoes, I shall be pleased, you will be pleased, your tummy will be pleased. We can do nothing about your father. You have it in your power to upset all or one, about whom, as I have already said, we can do nothing. Therefore, the conclusion should be clear, but I have faith in your ability to reach it yourself. Do what you will, Jason. He began to stuff it in. You're making a poof out of that kid, I said, only not loud enough for anybody but me and Sandy to hear. Then I took a deep, deep breath, because whenever I come home, there's always trouble, which is because, Helen says, I bring tension with me. I always need inhuman proof that I've been missed, that I'm still needed, loved, etc. All I know is I hate being away, but coming home is the worst. There's never really much chance to go into, well, what's new since I'm gone chit-chat, seeing that Helen and I talk every night anyway. I'll bet you're a whiz on that bike, I said then. Maybe we'll go for a ride this weekend. Jason looked up from his potatoes. I really loved the book, Dad. It was great. I was surprised that he said it, because naturally I was just starting to work my way into that subject matter. But then, as Helen's always saying, Jason ain't no dummy. Well, I'm glad, I said. And was I ever. Jason nodded. Maybe it's even the best I read in all my life. I nibbled away at my spinach. What was your favorite part? Chapter 1, The Bride, Jason said. That really surprised me. Not that Chapter 1 stinks or anything, but there's not that much that goes on compared with the incredible stuff later. Buttercup grows up mostly is all. How about the climb up the cliffs of insanity, I said then. That's in Chapter 5. Oh, great, Jason said. And that description of Prince Humperdinck's Zoo of Death? That's in the 2nd chapter. Even greater, Jason said. Please stop.
Okay.
What knocked me out about it, I said, was that it's this very short little passage on the Zoo of Death, but yet somehow just know it's going to figure in later. Did you get that same feeling? Mm-hmm. Jason nodded. Great. By that... Can you either stop or open it all the way so that I don't have to listen to you slurping in my ear?
I know.
Charlotte?
Mhm.
Okay. By then I knew he hadn't read it. He had tried to read it, Helen cut in. He did read the 1st chapter. Chapter 2 was impossible for him, so when he'd made a sufficient and reasonable attempt, I told him to stop. Different people have different tastes. I told him you'd understand, Willie. Of course I understood. I felt just so deserted, though. I didn't like it, Dad. I wanted to. I smiled at him. How could he not like it? Passion, duels, miracles, giants, true love. You're not eating the spinach either, Helen said. I got up. Time change. I'm not hungry. She didn't say anything until she heard me open the front door. Where are you going? She called then. If I'd known, I would have answered. I wandered through December. No top coat. I wasn't aware of being cold, though. All I knew was I was 40 years old, and I didn't mean to be here when I was 40, locked with this genius shrink wife and this balloon son. It must have been 9 o'clock when I was sitting in the middle of Central Park alone. No one near me, no other bench occupied. That was when I heard the rustling in the bushes. It stopped. Then again. Very soft. Nearer. I whirled, screaming, "Don't you bug me!" And whatever it was, friend, foe, imagination, fled. I could hear the running, and I realized something. Right then, at that moment, I was dangerous. Then it got cold. I went home. Helen was going over some notes in bed. Ordinarily, she would come out with something about me being a bit elderly for acts of juvenile behavior, but there must have been danger clinging to me still. I could see it in her smart eyes. He did try, she said finally. I never thought he didn't, I answered. Where's the book? The library, I think. I turned, started out. Can I get you anything? I said no. Then I went to the library, closed myself in, hunted out The Princess Bride. It was in pretty good shape, I realized as I checked the binding, which is when I saw it was published by my publishing house, Harcourt, Brace, Jovanovich. This was before that. They weren't even Harcourt, Brace, and World yet. Just plain old Harcourt, Brace, period. I flicked to the title page, which was funny, since I'd never done that before. It was always my father who'd done the handling. I had to laugh when I saw the real title, because right there it said, The Princess Bride, S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure. You had to admire a guy who called his own new book a classic before it was published and anyone else had a chance to read it. Maybe he figured if he didn't do it, nobody would, or maybe he was just trying to give the reviewers a helping hand. I don't know. I skimmed the 1st chapter, and it was pretty much exactly as I remembered. Then I turned to the 2nd chapter, the one about Prince Humperdinck and the little kind of tantalizing description of the Zoo of Death. And that's when I began to realize the problem. Not that the description wasn't there. It was, and again, pretty much as I remembered it, but before you got to it, There were maybe 60 pages of text dealing with Prince Humperdinck's ancestry and how his family got control of Florin in this wedding, and that child begatting this one over here who then married somebody else, and then I skipped to the third chapter, the courtship, and that was all about the history of Gilder and how that country reached its place in the world. The more I flipped on, the more I knew. Morgenstern wasn't writing any children's book. He was writing a kind of satiric history of his country and the decline of the monarchy and Western civilization. But my father only read me the action stuff, the good parts. He never bothered with the serious side at all. About 2 in the morning, I called Hiram in Martha's Vineyard. Hiram Hayden's been my editor for a dozen years, ever since Soldier in the Rain, and we've been through a lot together, but never any phone calls at 2 in the morning. To this day, I know he doesn't understand why I couldn't wait till breakfast. "You're sure you're all right, Bill?" he kept saying. "Hey, Hiram," I began after about 6 rings. "Listen, you guys published a book just after World War I. Do you think it might be a good idea for me to abridge it and we republish it now?" "You're sure you're all right, Bill?" "Fine, absolutely. And see, I just used the good parts. I kind of bridge where there were skips in the narrative and leave the good parts alone. What do you think?" "Bill, it's 2 in the morning up here. Are you still in California?" I acted like I was all shocked and surprised, so he wouldn't think I was a nut. "I'm sorry, Hiram. My God, what an idiot. It's only 11 in Beverly Hills. Do you think you could ask Mr. Jovanovich, though?" "You mean now?" "Tomorrow or the next day. No big deal." "I'll ask him anything, only I'm not quite sure I'm getting an accurate reading on exactly what you want." "You're sure you're all right, Bill?" "I'll be in New York tomorrow. Call you then about the specifics, okay?" "Could you make it a little earlier in the business day, Bill?" I laughed and we hung up, and I called Zig in California. Everett Ziegler's been my movie agent for maybe 8 years. He did the Butch Cassidy deal for me, and I woke him up too. "Hey, Zig, could you get me a postponement on the Stepford Wives? There's this other thing that's come up." "You're contracted to start now. How long a postponement?" "I can't say for sure. I've never done an abridgment before. Just tell me what you think they'd do." "I think if it's a long postponement, they'd threaten to sue and you'd end up losing the job." It came out pretty much as he said. They threatened to sue, and I almost lost the job and some money and didn't make any friends in the industry, as those of us in showbiz call movies. But the abridgment got done, and you hold in your hands the good parts version. Why did I go through all that? Helen pressured me greatly to think about an answer. She felt it was important, not that she know necessarily, but that I know. "Because you acted crackers, Willie boy," she said. "You had me truly scared." "So why?" I never was worth beans at self-scrutiny. Everything I write is impulse. This feels right. That sounds wrong. Like that. I can't analyze. Not my own actions, anyway. I know I don't expect this to change anybody else's life the way it altered mine. But take the title words, True Love and High Adventure. I believed in that once. I thought my life was going to follow that path, prayed that it would. Obviously, it didn't, but I don't think there's high adventure left anymore. Nobody takes out a sword nowadays and cries, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." And true love you can forget about, too. I don't know if I love anything truly anymore beyond the porterhouse at Peter Luger's and the cheese enchilada at El Parador's. Sorry about that, Helen. Anyway, here's the good parts version. S. Morgenstern wrote it. And my father read it to me. And now I give it to you. What you do with it will be of more than passing interest to us all.